Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome to the Ikonns podcast. Thank you for being here. It's good to have you back, and it's good to be back again. Alex, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling super great. I'm so excited. We're supposed to actually do an interview for the Intelligent Change podcast, which we're really excited about. We're going to launch that. It's going to be a little different from the Icons, be very focused on intelligent change. And I'm just excited. We said, hey, why not? Let's do record a podcast today. And we wanted to talk about something very important,
The word is networking.
which a lot of people don't like. People don't like networking. Even I myself included, I don't have good associations with the
Why don't
word
we have
networking.
good associations with the word networking?
I think it feels salesy, and a lot of people are afraid
Mm,
of sales and they don't like sales. And I think a lot of us have a misconception of what it is, including myself. For a long time, I thought I don't know if anyone's ever been to a networking event.
they are horrendous.
It's so
I
cringy.
really feel so
Have you
awkward.
ever been to a networking event?
I mean, I've been to events that
But like a true network,
not
not
a true
like a
networking.
true
You couldn't
networking event.
drag me into that place. But I've been to many events that are for the purpose of networking, I guess. I mean, all events are there for us to, in a way, meet other people. But I've been part of, let's say, a business sisterhood.
That was cool. I like that. You're a different level. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm
Yes.
here to speak to you about this. What I'm speaking about, I've been
Mm.
to a true networking event back in the day before we started our business where people exchange business cards and try to do things. It feels very transactional.
Yeah,
And I think this is
exactly.
the whole reason why people have this association with networking because it feels transactional. Nobody wants to be transacted to.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times when you are at these events that are business events and people go there specifically to meet other people who can help them on their journey, when they meet you and they look at, let's say, the name tag and what you do, or if you have no name tag or a business card, they talk to you, but they kind of like look over your shoulder. Have you experienced that?
I think that's a lot of events, and that's true. It's not even just networking; it's just events in general where
Mm.
people are trying to get the most value, and then you see it. And I think people do that online. However, when you see that in person, and now that we're more in person, you're able to witness it and see it. You bring up a very valuable point, but today I think let's go
Yeah,
through.
let's talk about networking because first of all, it was a requested topic by our viewers. And second of all, because I think you're actually quite brilliant at networking. I, on the other hand, I'm really good at making friends. I'm gonna make a video about making friends on on YouTube on my channel very soon. But I see networking and making friends different.
I don't
Tell
think
me, how do you see it? Because I know you're good at obviously having relationships, maintaining relationships with your friends, but also networking and always meeting new people. And you're not necessarily friends with these people, but you keep in touch and you have these relationships. Again, I see it as networking. What do you see it like? I would like to hear your point of view.
I don't think there's a difference. I think it's the same between networking, making friendships, building relationships. It's all a human experience. And for myself, I would love to always build a deeper relationships. That's my intention from the get go. It's not transactional. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that I want to get something from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe before, and that's the thing that I think what happens to many of us when I was at that first, let's say, networking event, yeah, I was there like everybody else, just try to get something. And
Mm.
most of the time, when you're in those type of settings, no one's gonna get anything because everyone's just trying to get and not to give.
Mhm.
And I think relationships and all relationships are really about giving and providing value.
Yeah.
And it's that more natural give and take that happens. However, the intention that I come with is how do I bring more value into this situation? And going back to before, when you're just going from that mind of scarcity and trying to take, I think that's when you are not able to get a lot. And especially for many of you who are just starting out, as we were back in the day, because even before this, I went on my Instagram and said, hey, what topics do you guys want me to cover? And this was one of them, which was great. And there was many other questions. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually quickly did a Q&A and responded to a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought me back to, you know, our beginnings, before business, before money, before anything. And I think many of you listening might be in that situation, or maybe even further ahead. But I find that people who are successful are very good at networking.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it in this more of a natural way.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes actually less cringy as people become more wealthier, which is very interesting, because it becomes more this kind of just fun setting in terms of just doing fun things together, and you share similar interests, and it builds up on that. So that's why I think one of the things to speak about is, let's say, even my own journey
Yeah.
from when we had nothing, we're broke, and you're trying to just, because you don't have a lot, so you come from that point of view of scarcity. And most of us, when we bring that energy of scarcity, we're not actually able to vibrate to a certain degree in that frequency when other people
Mm-hmm.
want to even interact with us,
Right.
because we're still very energetic beings and we feel each other out,
Mm-hmm.
I find.
So, how do you navigate during these networking events? And I'm not going to call them networking anymore. I'll just say events, because you go to a lot of events. You attended 2 different events in the last month. You went to Paris for a 2-day event on business. And then you just came back from Ibiza, where you also went to an event more about mindfulness and things like that. So, you met a lot of new people there. You were probably sat at dinner tables with people you didn't know. Again, I cringe at that kind of
Really?
well, I love it. I love it, but at the same time, I feel a bit uncomfortable. I have to be honest. I love people, like I said, but I feel like, well, it depends on the event. Maybe that's the thing. If it was more business related event, I feel like I would find it a bit more challenging to connect to people. And of course, if it was a mindfulness event, I feel like everybody would be into similar interests. It's funny listening myself talk about it because obviously I have a business, so I should be able to connect to people in a business environment as well. But I feel like, generally speaking, and of course I'm generalizing here, a lot of people at business events are again there to take and not give. So maybe I'm answering a little bit of my own question here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think before we really progress, I think the important thing to note to many people listening or watching this as we're doing video as well is that connections and ties, as you may call them, there's different ones. As you said, there's something that builds into a friendship
Mm-hmm.
or a relationship, or you have family ties. Those are like strong ties. Family is probably the strongest tie you will have. It's by blood, and it's a very strong tie that they'll always be family to a certain extent. Friendships can also be, they can become best friends. They can be a really good friend of yours. And then there's weak ties. There's acquaintances and people that you kind of maybe just met or just know. And I came across some research where, in reality, weak ties and weak connections
Mm-hmm.
actually uh, have higher potential to help you in terms of your career growth or business,
Mm-hmm.
or even relationships or anything else, versus your stronger ties.
Why is that?
I think a lot of times people, because there's a kind of deeper level, there's a lot of um, kind of weighing on that relationship. So if you screw up, if you give a certain recommendation or you
Mm.
give something else, um, it may not work out and it may kind of hurt your relationship because it's already strong. Versus a weak tie, you don't really know them that much. You're kind of like, yeah, cool, yeah, whatever. I'll kind of maybe do this for you, and you seem interesting. If there's of course still interest, there's still some value, I'll pass it on. So, but going back to this, I found that, as I probably can contribute at least 30% of our net worth to weak ties,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the investments that we've made that have
Mm-hmm.
been fruitful have been from people that I wasn't like close friends with. I was
That's
just
why I still see this distinction between having people in your network that are not necessarily your close friends You don't go on holidays with these people.
I'd love to.
Yeah, you don't speak to them every week, but they are in your network. If you ever needed something, you probably would feel comfortable to reach out to them and ask for an advice, or ask to meet up, to meet in person, or talk virtually. So there, but it's more of a professional relationship, I feel like, or
It doesn't have to be. I think it can go as deep as many relationships. And I think what you're trying to say, this is the important thing for people to understand, is not to treat them as different. I think you're trying to treat them as different things and kind of bucket
it's not
people.
even, yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting, but it's not even that I'm treating them differently. You know me very well. I'm very much into having deep relationships. I think for this reason, I very much struggle with having relationships that are a bit more shallow or just focus on one area of life, let's say only business. So I don't really have friends who I talk to only about business. I talk about motherhood to my
Mm.
friends, or parenting in general if it's a male friend. We talk about everything. And I feel like there's a need for me to connect on that level with people. Whereas if I just talk to them on one area of life, I don't connect the same way.
Sure.
Therefore, I don't really invest much time in building these relationships. However, I agree with you that there is great value in having these relationships, as we can see now.
Yeah, I think the most valuable thing in my journey has been understanding that meeting people where they're at. So understanding that not all people are comfortable with having those deep personal conversations
Mm.
right away.
Mhm.
And it's more of an intuitive feel to have that understanding of, that's, I'm not going to talk about what's the meaning of life with this person right now.
Mhm.
We're engaging mostly on the business talk, and you can potentially ask some questions that will lead you. Okay, how do they react to that? Because I think a lot of relationships are about building rapport, and
Mhm.
rapport is really that connection. And a lot of times it's how we are interacting with each other, how we mirror each other, and with that mirroring effect,
Mhm.
that's where we kind of try to intuitively feel of where are they at, energetically as well. And sometimes we can also bring up that energy if we want. But I think we can tell a lot with that, building that rapport of meeting where they're at, because people become more comfortable when there are people similar to us as
Mhm.
well. And I think a lot of times it's important for us to not, in a way, reflect where we're at, because
Mhm.
you do have to be more of a chameleon in these type of situations
Mhm.
to read the room to a certain way, to read the room, to read where people are at. And a lot of people are still on guard when they're meeting new people. It's evolutionary. It's
Mhm.
tribal in us. I don't know you. Maybe yes, if we're in the same business setting with their certain introduction, or we're somebody's home, you feel more comfortable because obviously you're part of the same tribe or group. However, of course, if you're in a total, complete networking event where everyone's a stranger, everyone has, in a way, kind of their guards up, and that's why a lot of
Mhm.
times we have to do the small talk as
Yes, thank
people.
you for bringing up the small talk. This is why I don't now I remember why. Yes, I struggle greatly with small talk.
So small talk can build into a deeper talk, and it's the same thing as in relationships. You don't just go to orgasm right away. You have to have a little foreplay, and you have to build up
Mhm.
that energy.
I was sharing this story with Alex recently because I was taking pottery class, and I was even there with a friend, Masha. We were taking it together, but obviously there's all these new people that I haven't, I mean, I've met them for a few classes, and it's new people that we just met, and everybody is so good at making small talk. And I just sat there and thinking that I don't even know how to fit into this conversation. I felt like the most awkward person. And yet, I love people, I love interacting with people, but I just don't know how to do small talk, especially how to do small talk with English people. And the reason I'm putting the emphasis on that is that they grew up with different food, different traditions. They kept making the small talk about things I cannot relate, like the office culture. I'm like, I don't know how to even, put one sentence in there because I just can't relate. on that level, but I can talk about the meaning of life. I
Yeah.
can talk about the purpose of why, I'm all about the deep topics. So it's not that something is wrong with these people, but I just don't know how to do the small talk. And, I avoid events, a lot of events where I know small talk is going to be part of it.
I think all events to a certain degree may have that small talk
Yeah.
element in it. I think in those situations, it's good to just observe
Hmm.
and
Yeah. How do you
be.
deal with the small talk? Because you're not a small talk kind of person
Well,
either. You don't watch sports. You're not part of, well, actually, you are.
I like to be a generalist. I know a lot of topics. I know what's going
Yeah,
on in the
you
world
keep
and
in touch with what's
with
happening,
the
whereas I'm
reality.
clueless. Yeah, I don't know what's
with,
going on in the world.
well, I think in these situations, I think this is what you're good at too, is you be curious and you
Mm,
ask questions and you see
right.
where they land. And this is the whole reason, you're the creator in a certain
I'm
regards
good at asking questions. Yes.
to the get
Yeah.
closer
Yeah.
cards, and that we have part of intelligent change. You're the one that thought of and
I think
created.
this has been my coping mechanism probably my whole life. It's just
Yeah,
asking questions
and
because oftentimes I don't know how to,
yeah, and as you know, in the great book How to Win Friends, how's it? What's that book?
how to win friends and influence people.
There you go. And How to Win
Dale
Friends and
Carnegie, I
I
think.
believe so. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think it deserves a reread, even for us. It's something that we read
It's
or
quite
listened to
remarkable.
a
It's a
long time
must,
ago.
must, must listen or read.
But in that book, what he communicates is that people love to talk.
Mm.
So if you're actually in, let's say, in this networking situation, when you're asking questions, especially if you can be asking good questions,
Yes.
people love that. Even
Hmm.
this weekend in Ibiza, like I've got actually a few compliments where they're like, "Alex, you ask such great questions."
Really? Because
Yeah.
you're usually the one doing all the talking. So
Well,
this is great progress, Alex.
well, now I'm evolving as well.
Wonderful.
We have our mindful affirmations, which we practice, and
And one of the affirmations is, I listen more than I talk.
yeah, so I am evolving. I'm trying to practice some more, and I do find that it's this balance.
Hmm.
But most of the time, if you can have this dance where it's the same thing. Like I remember we took salsa back in the day and we're dancing, and the whole point of, say, even the male partners, like, make your partner look good, and if you can make your partner look good, then you both look good. And I
Absolutely.
think the same thing in these type of situations, and is how can we be more interested, mindful, present with the other person that we're engaging with. And as you said, especially it can be in these situations where people are looking for a more important person to chat or whatever, is yeah, even if you randomly with some person, you just still engage with them and be with them and be present with them. And to be honest with you, it's something that I still need to work on, and I'm aware of that it's okay. This is another human being and I can engage with them in this conversation. And as you know, I think you're really good at this, is being
Hmm.
really curious and just interested in the
Hmm.
person themselves.
Hmm.
And I think that's the way to really the value of networking is actually not being too businessy. I think people will actually help be more open if you are actually more interested in them, you are more curious in them, and then they'll actually, the business stuff actually happens after. A
Hmm.
lot of times, uh, and I would say I even took these tips from you to a certain
Hmm.
degree.
Yeah.
Let's say not even speak about what I've done or what I've created.
I never talk about what I do unless people directly ask me, what do you do? What is your business? I would never, ever in a million years talk about myself at all. Not even the business side, but just in general.
and
I'm like, what about you? Like, what do you like? What makes you happy? I'll ask all kinds of questions, but I'll never talk about myself. You're right.
and same thing about um, engaging them, meaning not also asking them about what do you do. And this has
Hmm.
been some of
Yeah, this
the,
is a taboo question to
well,
ask
in
in
more in
networking
Europe,
events. I
I'll
think
say,
everywhere.
I think is we've
There's
been,
so many articles on why not to ask that question because it puts a lot of pressure on people to have to impress. And actually, this is what turns a lot of people off from these events or networking events specifically, is that question of what do you do? Because if you don't like what you do, then again, it's going to kind of drag the conversation down because you're not really happy. So instead of asking that questions, you can ask, what's something exciting that happened this week? Or what's making you happy these days? I mean, there's so many great questions to ask beside the question, what do you do? Because it's almost like when the person asks that question, they're trying to assess your worth and your value and if they should continue talking to you. Because if you say, well, I run the successful business, they're going to be really impressed and then they're going to want to continue the conversation. But what if I'm just starting out on my journey and I'm clueless? Does that make me less of a person? And for that reason, I think it's a good question to ask eventually if you're interested in the person. However, I think there's so many more deep, interesting, or shallow even questions to ask to slowly build that rapport, as you said.
Exactly. And I think it's thinking about more in that regards. And I still find that, say, spending the last decade here in the UK and more in Europe, it's people do that less here
Absolutely. Yeah, they
than
do
they
that
do in
less.
North
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
And it's something that I also had to, I'm still learning and adjusting to not go and ask that right away. And through those, just that back and forth and that conversation, and really try to be genuinely interested in the other person, you're able to then build that rapport, build that relationship. And, however, the important thing I think it is to bring up is not to have that expectation and conditions of trying to get something. I think energetically people will feel, and it's something about like scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. If you just approach it from uh, more of, hey, I'm safe where I am, and I have lots of value to give, people will be able to read that. And I'm saying this because it's something that's still very recent. It did take me a long time to build my self-confidence, to build myself up through what I do. And in my own personal life, in terms of my health, my relationships, the business that we have, that allows me to have that aura and that confidence in myself. But it's the work that I do on myself. So I think it is a journey. It is a journey. And what I'm trying to say is that, which is a very important point, is people can smell or feel, whatever you want to call it, when you're out there trying to take something from a person.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is, something to be self-aware of. And how can you actually see how you can actually bring more to the conversation or add more value from your side? And a lot of times adding value, as what we discuss, is just generally being curious and asking questions about another person. As we're having this conversation, it just reminds me too, it's something that I also need to be more aware of in these things, because the response most of the time, people love it. And also you can also in these networking events learn who's a sketchy character, because also in these business events there are some sketchy people doing sketchy things.
Oh gosh.
What I mean is,
how do you identify these people?
Me personally, they're usually, you can't get anything out of them.
Like you ask them a direct question and they
stay surface all the time. They never even allow you to even go anywhere, find anything about them. And that's, I don't know, to me, I'm like, that's a bit sketchy. Like I'm not coming from a place to try to, I'm just curious. But they're on guard.
You can sense it.
You can sense it that. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm still enjoy kind of the company, things like that. But I know it's not something that I would want to
pursue further.
And they may be, very avant-garde and flashy and spend lots of money and things like that. But I know it's not what attracts me either, because I still want, as yourself as well, be able to have a deeper, meaningful relationship with the person. But going back, I think, to speaking about how do you carry on these relationships, how do you maintain them? As I said, let's say over the last few weekends, I was in different events. So say even this past weekend when I was out at the event, it was similar things. A lot of times I wouldn't ask them, what do they do? And I'll say on day 2, when we'd have more chatting or we'd be sitting across the table,
sometimes it comes out in a conversation naturally, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the best?
Or naturally, or I would just, I think after you built up some of that rapport, I would ask them straight up.
So what is it that you do?
Yeah. No, because I was in this situation, it was actually very interesting. this gentleman, he was just, we had actually deep conversations right away. He
Mm-hmm.
asked me a very deep question about
Mm-hmm.
like, so what's your idea of the afterlife and how do you envision
I
it?
love that.
And I'm cool with it. I can go at and obviously because
I don't even
he
think I had this conversation with my father.
yeah,
It's a good question to ask.
yeah, but obviously he felt comfortable because he just heard me speak
Mm.
for
Oh,
like I was
okay.
presenting
That's
for
why.
30 minutes
Yeah.
and he kind of knew I shared a lot of my journey, things like
Mm.
that, and he felt comfortable to
Yes.
to go
Yeah.
deep right away, and we had some other conversations.
So again, the circumstances can make the environment more conducive to these conversations, and then make the people feel more comfortable to open up rather than stay on the surface level.
Exactly, but at the same time we would then chat and see each other throughout this next 2 days, and by the second dinner I was just really curious
Mm-hmm.
because you can see naturally this person is a really good salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be promoting me to
Mm-hmm.
other people when they'll meet, and hey, did Alex is doing this and he's brilliant and things like that, so he's also
Such an amazing
hyping
skill
me
to
up,
have, quality
which is
to
also
have.
great. That's another great
Mm-hmm.
thing to practice is if you see a good quality about another person, you can speak about this person to other people and say, "Hey, have you met Mimi? She asks really great questions."
Mm-hmm. Definitely, probably something he learned to build as a quality because he's attended a lot of these events where he meets new people, and this is one way to build that rapport and relationship with people.
And that's when I asked him,
Yeah.
like sitting come across him from a dinner table. I'm like, "So what do you do?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Well, I was the CEO of this very large company for like 30 years." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Whoa!" Like obviously like a very powerful position, but he was super friendly, super chilled,
Yeah.
and I was then kind of
Mm-hmm.
very impressed, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
he didn't, as we're speaking about, he didn't say right away, "Hey, I'm the CEO of
Yeah.
wherever," or it would even get to that level. We actually had more of these personal conversations and things like that we spoke about, which is very interesting. But in all this, I think the most important
Mm-hmm.
thing is the consistency and follow through. How do you then, maybe before, if you had a connection
Mm-hmm.
or you felt similar, similar values or something you shared, you do ask them for it. Hey, it would be great to grab your number or Instagram, whatever setting
Mm-hmm.
that you're in. That what's the best way to exchange
Mm-hmm.
contact, and whether it be is there a phone number or
Mm-hmm.
email to then follow up. Ideally within 24 to 48 hours
Absolutely. I think the
uh,
follow-up is so important because
after
then you
event,
just lose that connection.
so
It's
they remember. Because if you just follow,
not relevant to write in a
yeah,
month,
because
right?
yeah, exactly. If you get their contact and you write to them in 3 to 6 months and say, "Hey, it's Alex from this event," they'll be like,
Not so genuine, right?
"Yeah," they'll be kind of like, "What?" They're not even so genuine, but they'll also be like, "What?
But I
What
feel like if
happened?"
you're writing in 3, 6 months, it's because you want something from them. And
Potentially,
if you're just connecting 24 hours after, it's because you generally just want to have the connection. Hey, we just met. It was so great to chat with you. Let's keep in touch. And you already keeping that connection really warm for future conversations that might come, rather than writing in 3 months. I feel like I would feel if somebody reaches out to me months later is because they want something from me straight away, rather than if they reached out straight away after we met.
exactly, and
You know
and
what I
also.
mean?
And also in that follow up, you can bring up maybe some of the things you discussed. Hey, I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed how we're discussing about our love for travel and Positano and that
Mm-hmm.
special restaurant that we both loved, whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
So even when they in the future, when you message them, even in the future, they'll also know, give some
Mm-hmm.
context of where they met you. Because I had those situations too. People were like, "Hey, Alex," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"What is this? Where is this message coming from?" Or as somebody just randomly cold called me yesterday. So happens as well.
That was the
And
first.
yeah, and then in all this, what I'm trying to say is that I'm still on a journey. I'm still developing a lot of these things, and a lot of times is actually observing, as we said, about people who are great at it. When you see
Mm-hmm.
somebody who has great energy, aura, and they're very likable, I try to also observe. I'm like, wow, what is that? What is that about this
Mm-hmm.
person that
Makes them,
that makes them what
yeah.
it is? And a lot of times, it is these qualities that same thing that they discuss in how to win friends and influence people that we're still working on is remembering people's names,
Absolutely.
and it's something that
This is one I still struggle with.
yeah, same with me, but it's so important. And
Ugh.
then and the way you can help you is just repeating their name.
Again, repeating and repeating and repeating in a conversation. Alex here, maybe that's why he does this, right?
Yeah.
As he talks about you, he gets to repeat your name. But even when I find this is so challenging, even when I know for sure, I know the person's name, I'm still terrified to
I
mispronounce
know, me
or
too. Yeah.
say the
Jack
wrong
when they're
name.
or Jake.
Yeah. I do you experience that as
Of
well? So
course,
I'll
yeah.
just be quiet. I just won't say their name. And I know I want to say the name. And then it's like this vicious cycle that I've been in. And sometimes, of course, I override it and I face my fear and I say the name and I realize it is the right name. But oftentimes I'm just terrified that I've remembered the wrong name.
Yeah, I have the same thing,
Or I just don't remember it, even though they said it 3 seconds ago.
and sometimes I think it's
Is it okay
okay.
to ask
I
again?
think it's okay. I
Yeah.
think it's better to.
Sometimes I ask them, how do you spell it? And then I literally would write it down in my notes
I
because
like
at
that.
least I'll have it there and
Yeah,
I'll
and
go
I
to the
think
bathroom to
yeah,
look
and I
at
think
it.
a good way to try to remember is try to associate.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like could be some strange name that you've never heard before.
Yeah, but it could be like, oh, Alexa, Amazon, and be like, no, don't say it to them, but you kind of remember it in your mind with it. However, what I've also noticed is that, and this is something that I'm also trying to develop in myself, is in that curiosity in those questions, you also may find out, when is their birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and also what are their wife's name or their kids' names and who they
Mm-hmm.
are and things like that. If you can get to that level, and if you can then in your phone put down that in your notes.
Some
So
people are really incredible at this. Like
I
they
know,
meet me and they say, "How was Alexa? How was this?" And I'm thinking, how do they even remember her name? I
yeah,
mean, I've met this person maybe twice. I don't remember their children's
yeah,
names.
and as you know, something I mentioned to you as well, I was hanging out with somebody who's we met a few years ago. I believe I just met, and
Mm-hmm.
very successful, multi-billion-dollar company.
And he
And,
remembered my
yeah,
name.
and he said, "How's Mimi?" And this guy has met me once, probably, and he,
I would have never. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's embarrassing. I need to get better at this.
yeah.
Maybe there are courses I can take.
So and he would remember like, "Oh, how's your daughter? Or how old is she now?" So
Incredible. I mean,
even
this is truly a quality to develop,
so
right?
yeah, and part of this conversation, what we're saying, I think, which is really important, we're on this journey as well. We're
Mm.
not perfect. It's something that we're also observing and trying to get better at. But what I keep finding as we're in these circles of very wealthy people is that you do find it they're really good at this stuff.
It's part of having
Uh,
great manners.
yeah,
I'm not even going to say good, but great.
exactly.
Because
And
it's quite impressive.
yeah, and then they're really good on the follow-ups and thinking those all that stuff. And the reason I'm saying that too is we come from very humble upbringings.
Where we were not taught any of this. Well, please and thank you for sure, but nothing beyond that.
Exactly. So
Even the knife was optional
exactly.
or non existent for most of my life.
So we're
Well,
also
half of my life, not
so
most
we're
of my
also learning about all
life.
this journey, but I think part of the questions that so many people have asked, even when I ask people today about the topics we like to discuss, obviously a lot of people want to be successful. They want to
Hmm.
have, whether it be successful businesses, and they ask, how do you make these investments and things like that. A lot of it's relationship building. And also, as I said
Yes,
before, not
absolutely.
seeing it as networking, but also seeing it as relationship building and seeing it for a long term.
I like that term, relationship building.
And relationship building, what I mean by that is that not having expectation that you're going to get something in the short term, and
Hmm.
actually giving value and investing and seeing what potentially through that conversation, how can you add value into other person's life?
Hmm.
And, it can be in different ways. And I know, like as I said before, some of the best I can personally contribute a large chunk of our network, like net worth in financial terms to this, because I know I've been led on deals simply because I followed up. I was curious about the people, what they're doing, and
You kept in touch.
I also so you follow up
Simply.
after, but also kept in touch
If
after.
you're in the same city, you message them, you meet up. If you're
Yeah.
traveling to the same place and they happen to be there, you meet up. So you keep in touch. I've
Ex-
seen you do that so
Yeah,
often.
exactly. Oftentimes, as you know, I don't like to eat lunches alone. And there's a great book, I think, Never Eat Alone
I
by
remember that one.
Kiefer
Yeah, yeah,
Farazi.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I try to practice that. I try to
Yeah.
not eat alone. Uh,
You are doing that. You're not trying. Do
exactly.
or don't. There is no trying. You are doing it, my friend.
So even if let's say I'm going to a different city, I would check, okay, who is in that
Yeah,
city?
yeah.
Who do I know maybe in that city?
Mm,
Even in a weak connection. As you know, I was in this foodie event
mm-hmm.
a few months ago, and I met somebody there. I know they lived in Paris, and we had certain things. They didn't say, hey, come over to my home. They just say, hey, whatever, give me a shout next time you're in the city. And I was like, hey, my family and I were coming to Paris this weekend. We'd love to see you for, lunch or dinner.
Let's go out.
Let's go
Yeah.
out.
And they actually invited over to their beautiful house and cooked for us, and it was the most amazing experience.
Exactly. And what I'm trying to say is
Have
that
no expectations.
have no expectations. Try to offer something of value. Try to invite them over. Also
Mm-hmm.
treat them to lunch if you're inviting them.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially early on, it can be, I understand. I've been there before. As you know, even when we began our relationship, you used to think I'm super cheap. Um, when it
I
comes,
actually had a conversation about this with Masha the other day because you paid for the first date, but you let us split on the second date. And I cringed and I thought, oh, I really like everything else about him. So I'm just going to close my eyes to this. But the story ends as a year and a half later, when you refinanced the mortgage to your flat that you and your mom owned, you ended up paying all my school debt because I had some debt from my going to college. And then I remember thinking, how could I have ever thought that he was cheap? You're definitely not cheap.
yeah, but at the
I
same
just
time,
wanted to share the story because I'm
yeah,
forever grateful that you paid for my debt. That
yeah.
was so beautiful.
And it was the best investment I've ever made.
I
And
never expected that either.
not to have that, I think it was like I said,
Yeah.
it was the best investment I've ever made. But I didn't ever think that there was conditions to
Mm.
that. It was done unconditionally. And same thing then. I think a lot of times what I'm trying to bring up is when we don't have money, and I'm saying this because we've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Even let's say we only started going to maybe restaurants after me personally after 18 or years old or something like that, or 19, or maybe I've done it like once in my teenage.
Yeah. In
I
my 20s, I would say, when I started to make my own money.
I remember those times not being able to go to a restaurant, not be able to afford an appetizer on the menu or a dessert, just only ordering maybe an appetizer or a main. And a lot of times investing into other relationships and potentially offering to pay. That doesn't mean they're even going to accept to pay, but even a gesture of you offering to pay can already go a long way as well.
Or instead, you can offer to take them out for
Coffee,
coffee or tea,
yeah.
which shouldn't be that pricey, right? You're gonna spend $15 to $20 pounds,
Yeah,
and you're still gonna have the same level of conversation.
exactly. And it's something I think that's very important is to still have that gesture and to
Less of a
invite them out
commitment. Yeah.
and have those conversations. And in all of this, as in my past experience, is that the curiosity in other people and not doing your best to not make it robotic. I understand at first it may feel robotic to do a lot of these things, to ask these questions, all this stuff. And that's why it's about quantity actually over quality. So,
What do you mean by that?
meaning the more you expose yourself to more conversations, to
Yeah.
more people, and like I said, it's been taking me last 15 years that I've been more mindful of this, from my first cringe networking event to where I am now. And I'm still developing and I'm still working on myself. And that's the thing to keep in mind is that, hey, you're not a finished slate. Doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. And don't compare yourself to those people who are great. And that's why even the people that we brought up that are excellent at great manners, following up, building relationships, see them as inspiration. And that's how I see them. Like, oh, okay, cool. What can I learn from this person? Oh, that was really nice. I really liked how that person made me feel. I should do the same thing. I should write down, what their wife's name is or what their kid's name is in my notes. And to be honest, this is something I'm still doing recently. Because, like I said, as you start being around people who are good at this, you notice it and do more of it. Have that pattern recognition.
So learn from others. Yeah.
Learn from others. And the other thing I will say to note is, as I said, is don't try to make a transaction after every deal. So a lot of times when you just follow up and say, "Hey, how's it going? How you been?" I literally messaged somebody yesterday where a lot of times I just remember
Mhm.
somebody. And okay, if I remember, use that opportunity to just say hi. If somebody comes up in your
Mhm.
memory, in that moment, follow up, just say, "Hey, how are you doing? If where are you in the world? If they're in a different place,
Mhm.
or what you've been up to." And that's it. Just leave it at that. Because same thing. I didn't do it because there was. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kind of. It's transactional. I'm gonna do it.
Mhm.
I'm just doing it because hey, it came up in my mind. Instead of letting that thought of them be in my mind, or maybe I thought of something of them. Communicate to them. Hey, I saw you in my dream about this. It was funny, or or I just want to check in. How you and your wife are doing. It was really. I still remember the great times we had in the summer during that lunch. Just bring up those memories.
I think, yeah, another tip is again making mental notes of something that you share a passion for, wine or chocolate or oat milk. It could be literally anything. And then making that mental note. And when you see that product or place, you kind of take a picture and send it to them and say, hey, thinking of you now as we're having this wine. Or, they like sushi or anything, could be Italian, right? So find that common denominator with whoever you have met. And if you do, of course, want to keep in touch with this person and keep them in your network, then try to once in a while, not do it every week or every day, but once in a while, remind of yourself by sending them something that will make them smile or will remind them of that connection that you had together without asking for anything.
Yeah, and one thing I haven't done yet, but I want to start doing is this guy Steve Sims. I remember from Mastermind Talks. What he would do when he
Yeah.
would be in random hotels around the world, he would take the stationery from a hotel. Let's say he's staying at I don't know, the Four Seasons or something like that in some Greece or somewhere like that. He would take that. He would actually write them a handwritten note about something and send it to them. And I haven't,
Right, who?
I to one of their contacts or friends.
Just pick a person.
I haven't had that happen to me, but it would be really cool if I got a
Yeah.
letter from
Oh.
while they're on in holiday in Positano or somewhere, and
Mhm.
they're thinking of me. I'm like, wow, cool. Like the same thing. It's just a lot of times it's just a gesture,
Yeah,
and it's
it's just
something.
a thought.
It's just a
Yeah.
thought, the gesture that counts. And as you know, Sammy, our good friend Sammy, who
I
we're gonna
was just thinking, I was gonna bring him up, and then literally you must have read my mind.
we're gonna probably have him as guest very
Absolutely,
very
we will have
soon.
him.
And Sammy is so good at this.
He's quite brilliant.
Something that we'll maybe follow up with him about and ask
Yeah.
him how he does it. But he's younger than us, way younger than us, and he still writes handwritten notes and sends them out. And these
Remembers birthdays, special occasions.
thoughtful gifts,
I
all
can
those
barely
things.
remember our anniversary. I mean, we've forgotten our anniversary this
Yeah,
year. I remember like 2 days later.
we don't make it a priority in terms of we're a bit
We
different.
celebrate every day.
Every day is love.
Still good to remember.
But anyways, I think
We'll wrap it up here.
yeah, because we can I can keep chatting and talking about this. Overall, what I want to say is that it's never too late to start. The way you start and you build up is by putting yourself out there and practicing quantity. Do it more often. Put yourself. It's okay to be awkward. Do it long enough that because you'll learn as you engage with people in real life. You will actually be able to reflect and learn. Most of us are now hiding behind screens, not going out, and especially after the last few years whatever happened, you may be not feeling that kind of confidence. And the way to build up confidence is by putting yourself out there, is by going out, is by yes, screwing up, failing, saying something stupid, saying the person's name as Jake even though they're Jack, and but having those feelings and learning like, oh man, that made me feel bad. That's actually great. Meaning, if you actually felt bad and you screwed up,
You're never gonna use anybody's
you
name.
know you're gonna improve next time.
Yeah, that's true.
And
You'll find a system that works.
but you will only know if you put yourself out there. But most importantly, I think the message that I really want to portray in this conversation is stop being conditional. Stop trying to
Yeah.
go from a place of abundance, not from a place of scarcity.
Mhm.
And you don't need to have an exact way this person's going to help you out. I believe in serendipity. I believe in the universe. I believe that things will come my way. And a lot of times I'll give. Not if I don't get anything from a person, it's fine. If it's, I know I'll get it back some way. Like that's just my intention in the world. Is somehow things will come back to me. And if they don't, it's fine. It's not having that condition on a person or relationship or something that will happen. I'm there to just genuinely connect, and to learn and interact, and that's my approach. And when I actually changed my approach to that way, that's when actually I've been people like my company more. They appreciate my company, and they want to introduce me to other people because a lot of times, actually, one last important point to note. As I said, very fortunate to know a lot of very connected people or powerful people, all that stuff. And one of the feedback that I've got, because I know somebody who's knows like a very big celebrity, like tens of millions of followers on a personal level. They're like best friends. And I'm like, why are you best friends? And it says the person just appreciates that he knows that if I go in situations with them, I won't be awkward. Like I'll just be, I won't try to get anything from the situation, and that's why they trust me to go hang out with them. I'm just saying that that's at the very high level because it's more extreme. Those are seen, but it's the same thing on every level.
Nobody wants to be used.
Yeah, nobody wants to be used.
From this conversation, what I'm realizing is that I have a negative association attached to a lot of these quote unquote networking events or business events because I feel like people are there to take. And because I don't want to take anything from anyone, I sometimes feel like there's no value for me to be there. But listening to you now, I think the value can be to go there and to give to those who might need something, who might be just starting out on their journey or not, or you might contribute in a positive way to their relationship because you talk about your happy, positive relationship, or maybe the way you eat or anything, right? We can all bring value to someone in a different area based on what's going well in our lives. And I think it's about reframing these associations that we have in our lives. And yeah, I'm learning from you every day on how to say yes to meeting new people all the time. Although I am good at it, but I think you're great at it. And yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a follow-up conversation on this.
Yeah, I think just to last point, like I said, abundance over scarcity. And a lot of times with you, because I invite you to a lot of these all the time, because I have lunches
almost every day.
Almost every
With
day.
somebody new.
Yeah, I'm gonna have one today as well. Is that a lot of times you may see them as waste of time. That's a frame of mind where you're like, hey, I'm gonna go here to have this lunch for, an hour or an hour and a half, or maybe, or dinner, and then you're like, oh, if nothing comes out of it, it's a waste of my time. Where my frame of mind is like, it's not a waste of my time. I'm here interacting with other human. I get to learn about them. I get to see what they're into and things like that, and that helps me evolve as a person. And that's what that shift has probably allowed me the most to have more of that curiosity and to just be appreciative for having that ability to do that with other people. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really, really grateful for all of you watching, listening, to wherever you are in the world. We're so excited to be back with the Ikonns. Be consistent. So that's why it's so important for you to subscribe. Make sure to like this video or audio. You can now rate on Spotify, or please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. As you know, we don't sponsor this. We don't shout out any sponsors or anything like that. So we would really appreciate you just sharing this with a friend who just to have this conversation. Also, hey, I listened to this conversation about networking and building relationships. What do you think about it? And you can have a discussion, conversation, and most importantly, go out, try it out in the real world to see how this feels.
Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.